6.1 and 6.2 I'm going to do together. So they're going to be considered one video, but two sections. And what they do is they're taking you through some more complicated and more multi-step equations. So I find them very fun, but they are building off of what you learned in Chapter 5. So the basic thing to remember is that you have to first distribute, second CLT, do you remember what that means? Combine like terms, and third solve. And you want to think about that as like a checklist. Okay, and so I am going to add some complicated things on the solve part as well, but that's the basic checklist. So I start with this example problem. Distribute. There is no distributive property within this problem. So I move on. Check. Oops, I need my pen. Check. All right, combine like terms. So I can only combine like terms on each side. So there's nothing to combine over here, so this remains negative 32. And in the left member, I have three terms that are like. But it's important to look at the signs there. This is positive 3x, this is actually negative 2x, and this is positive 7x. So you could change this to plus negative 2x. That would be just fine to do that. But when you collect them together, you basically get 8x. So 8x equals negative 32. I've combined my like terms, and now all I have left to do is solve. And this part should not be too hard because you've done this before. Divide by 8, and I get x equals negative 4. You could always plug negative 4 back in for x to do a check step, but I'm not going to do that today. Okay, moving on. My checklist: distribute, combine like terms, and solve. So now I've got number 1, distribute, a very important step in this one. The negative 5 is going to distribute into the parentheses. The minus 2x or the negative 2x is just going to remain there. Negative 45 doesn't have anything to combine with, so we leave it as is. When I multiply negative 5 times x, I get negative 5x. When I multiply negative 5 times 6, I get plus negative 30. Then I've got minus 2x, or you can think about it as plus negative 2x, equals negative 45. Okay, so I've done my distributing. Now I'm going to combine like terms. So again, I'm going to change this to plus negative. If you're comfortable not changing that, that's okay with me. But you have to see it as a negative. So I get negative 7x. Negative 30 didn't have anything to buddy up with. It could buddy up with negative 45, but that's on the other side of the equals sign. And we have to treat that differently. So I just recopy it. And I have combined all my like terms. Now I'm going to solve. So I draw my line. I add 30 to both sides because I'm keeping everything balanced like they do with the pan balances. You have negative 7x equals negative 15. Negative 7 divided by negative 7, and now I have x equals negative divided by negative will give me a positive, so I don't need a sign there. 15 divided by 7, I could plug in my calculator, but wouldn't it make a lot of sense to just write it as a fraction? 2 and 1/7. And now I'm done, and I didn't even need a calculator. Solved. Yes, I could check it, but this would definitely be a messy check. So personally, if I were taking a test and doing this problem, I would check my work and maybe check the answer if I had lots of extra time. Okay, now watch out when distributing a negative. That's actually a really important thing. Watch out when distributing a negative because it's a tricky part of this section. I checked a lot of people's notes to self and they were missing this fine detail. So this should definitely be in your notes to self if it isn't already. So if you see this says 4x minus parenthesis 3x plus 7 parenthesis plus 6x. When I'm distributing, I actually am distributing a negative here. This negative is being distributed into the parentheses. Some people like to say, well, negative, just the negative, it actually is a negative 1. I put it as a dotted line because it's like a ghost 1 because it's not always written. So 4x is unaffected. I write 4x again. Now, when I distribute the negative, it becomes negative 3x and negative 7. 6x is untouched, so I recopy the 6x. Okay, distributing, done. CLT. All right, now a lot of people like it to change this to plus negative, change this to plus negative, and I encourage you to do that. And you have a like term, and a like term, and this one's a little different. So what do we have here? 1x plus 6x would give me 7x plus negative 7 equals negative 23. Now I've combined like terms. Finally, step 3 is solved. So I go ahead and add 7 to both sides. And I have 7x equals negative 23 minus 7 should give me negative 16. Divide by 7. X is negative 16 sevenths. Well, it's going to be negative because there's only one negative, and I can write it as a fraction, 2 and 2 sevenths. Okay, I solved, and I'm good. I made it past Captain Hook. Dun, 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 dun. All right, next one. One last new element. Notice the guy standing on the plank, because this is tricky. Notice this problem is actually quite difficult looking. I think you can handle it, but it is a little bit difficult looking. So let's erase that stray mark and go forward. Now we have a variable on both sides. See below. See how there's an x on the left side and an x on the right side? And I always said you need to start on the side with the variable, but I can't now because it's on both sides. So we're going to follow the same 3 steps as we have before. I'm going to extend this page a little, and we're going to first distribute. And there is distributing on both sides of the equation. So first I'm going to distribute this 2, and I'm going to distribute this 3, and everything else I'll recopy. So 2x plus 12 plus 5x equals 3x plus 3 plus 7. Now double check that you're always making sure you distribute to both things in the parentheses. Okay, done my distributive. Now I'm going to combine like terms. 2x and 5x is 7x plus 12 equals 3x doesn't have any buddies, but 3 and 7 do. So I recopy the 3x, and I have 3 plus 7, which gives me 10. Okay, so I've combined my like terms. Now all I have left is to solve. So what do I do now? I could do a lot of things. I have 4 choices at this point in the problem. What I need to do is I need to collect my x's and my x's and my numbers and my numbers. So in a sense, combining like terms. But because they're on opposite sides of the equation, you have to do this a little differently. You have to actually move the 7x by subtracting 7x on both sides. So I could do minus 7x on both sides. Okay? You could do that. You could also do something different. You could also subtract 12. But over here, I'm going to subtract 12 by the 10 because those are the 2 that I can actually subtract. I can't subtract 12 from an x term. So that would be another course of action. Another thing I could do is I could subtract 3x over here and 3x over here, keeping it consistent and lining up my x terms. Or I could subtract 10 from both sides, which, let's see that one. Subtract 10 from both sides. And that would also keep things balanced. So which one is the right one to do? Well, they're all correct. They all will get you to the correct answer. But if you want to strategize, you probably want to avoid getting a negative because negatives are more difficult to deal with. So I personally would either subtract 3x from both sides or subtract 10 from both sides. So I'm going to choose to subtract 3x from both sides. So now this one goes away, and I've got 10 left on this side. Over here, I didn't touch the 12, so I recopy it. And over here, I've got 7x minus 3x, which is going to give me 4x. Now, this looks like something I've dealt with before. So now I'm going to subtract 12 on both sides. Now I don't have as much of a choice as to what to do. And I get 4x equals negative 2. Divide by 4, divide by 4. And I'm running out of room. X equals -1/2. So I think it is pretty fun once you get the hang of it, but it does take a little bit of time. So now I have solved and I have saved the man from the plank. So on 6.1 and 6.2, you'll be doing all of these things. And please feel free to ask me questions or for more practice if this is tricky for you, because this needs to become a very automatic process for you after working through this chapter. So good luck.